Hey everybody, welcome to the Jeff Rubin Show. I am Jeff Rubin, and today I am very excited to be joined by Jason Michael Paul, producer of the touring Zelda Symphony of the Goddesses show. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeff.
Let's break that down a second. What exactly is Zelda Symphony of the Goddesses?
Well, where do I begin? Symphony of the Goddesses. Let's just say that the Symphony of the Goddesses is a concert devoted to The Legend of Zelda that spans the 25-year history of The Legend of Zelda. And it's essentially a retelling of The Legend of Zelda. We've broken it down into a 4-movement symphony. And it's just a phenomenal concert with the full orchestra, 66 musicians, 24-voice choir. We have a huge visual presentation with an 18 by 32-foot screen suspended above the orchestra that has amazing visuals that really just kind of help to, retell the story.
Can we, I'm not sure if this is at all possible, but can we possibly play a clip of it just so people know what we're talking about here and have an idea?
You can, yeah, for sure. Play it.
I mean, let's just start at the beginning. How did you get started with this?
I actually had the fortunate pleasure of, working in the video game industry as a kid. I started out, I'm a native San Franciscan, grew up in San Francisco, and obviously San Francisco being the hotbed that it is for video games, I started out working for companies like PlayStation and various game publishers. I worked as an associate producer for a branding and marketing agency that handled a lot of the sales meetings, E3 trade show booths for PlayStation, the PlayStation Store in San Francisco, which was the first totally interactive store, which I project managed. And then about 4 years later, I started getting into touring, and I began touring as a production tour manager with Luciano Pavarotti and the Three Tenors. So that's where my kind of classical and operatic background really started to take place. And then when I was in Costa Rica, I still maintained my relationship, and now Square Enix, the producers of Final Fantasy, were my client, who I was working with doing a lot of game launches and things like that. For instance, like Kingdom Hearts, when that game first came out. And then, of course, Final Fantasy, the movie, The Spirits Within. I worked on, the premiere of that, a lot of these things. And then I was, at the same time, simultaneously, I was also producing Three Tenor shows. And Pavarotti shows. So I was in Costa Rica, San Jose, Costa Rica, and I had this Final Fantasy album that they had recorded in Tokyo. And I had this new sound system that I was trying out. And of course, I was kind of the boss. And I pumped, and in sound check, I pumped the Final Fantasy One Winged Angel track through this sound system, this amazing Meyer rig that we had, which was a brand new rig that was literally pulled out of boxes. And I was pumping One Winged Angel through it, and it was just like, I got the idea. It just became clear to me that I want to do a video game music concert with Final Fantasy. So when I got back to the States, I pitched the idea to my folks at Square, and it just so happened that they were merging with Enix, which is, Squaresoft and Enix were like the two powerhouses in terms of RPGs, with Square with Final Fantasy and, of course, Enix with Dragon Quest. And they were merging as a company. And it just so happened that E3 was there, so all the stars were aligning. And so I pitched this idea of doing a Final Fantasy concert, and that was it. You know, and the next thing I know, it's E3. We have I'm hiring the LA Phil. I'm hiring the LA Master Chorale. I rented the Walt Disney Concert Hall downtown. It's E3. We went on sale. We sold out in 3 days. And next thing I know, I'm embarking on a world tour with dear friends, music from Final Fantasy, after the success of that. So I did that for a while. And then I was like, you know, there's something bigger out there. You know, I think that there's something to be said for all these various video games, and there's a huge audience that we have. You know, there's so many video games and so many fans out there. Why don't we do a video game concert devoted to not just Final Fantasy, but to all the various blockbuster titles like World of Warcraft, the Elder Scrolls series, Metroid, Zelda, Mario. You know, it's endless, right? So I started getting all the licenses and all the rights to start doing those games as well. And then I created a show called Play a Video Game Symphony, which premiered in 2006 in Chicago. And that sold out. I had like a who's who of composers there, everything from Nobuo Uematsu of Final Fantasy fame to, you know, Yasunori Mitsuda from Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger fame to Marty O'Donnell from Halo fame, you know.
This is like the greatest video game music of all time.
So I was touring with that, and then, you know, that show's still touring. And then, of course, the 25th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda in 2011, they contacted me, and they asked me if I could put together a performance to open up the E3 press conference for them with The Legend of Zelda. And so we created a theme for The Legend of Zelda, and that was really the kickoff of the press conference with the master, Miyamoto-san, really making some big announcements. He announced that we were going to do 3 25th anniversary concerts that would take place in Tokyo, London, and LA, which I did and I produced. And those were sold out and did amazingly well. It was huge. And then they also announced that we were going to do an orchestral CD that was going to accompany the Skyward Sword release, which I produced for them. And then, you know, I was like, let's take it beyond this. Let's create a concert series that could, much in the same way that I did Final Fantasy, let's create a concert series after these 25th anniversary concerts. And that's ultimately what happened. And now we're here 30 shows later, coming to New York with Symphony of the Goddesses.
Just to go back for a second, when you were working with the Three Tenors, were you a fan of that kind of music? Is it classical music or opera? I'm not even exactly. I know more about Zelda than I do about symphonies. Yeah. So just to give you an idea of my frame of reference, were you a fan of their music?
You know, it's funny you say that because I was just reminiscing. You know, I was in Boston recently with The Legend of Zelda Symphony of the Goddesses, and for me, that's where it all started. And I was kind of joking at the fact that, you know, I knew nothing before I was on a plane, headed to Boston to the Boston Garden, now the Fleet Center. And I was just backstage listening to Pavarotti perform Nessa Dorma, which is a very famous piece. And I was like, I had no experience, man, at all in producing orchestral concerts. But here I am doing it. And I just remember how beautiful it was. But no, I had no experience. You know, I knew very little. I was, of course, classically trained on a piano, you know, but really I knew nothing about opera. So, no, the short answer is I knew more about video games than I did about operatic and classical music.
But even as someone that doesn't know anything about that style of music, I know that Pavarotti and the Three Tenors are, I think, the biggest thing that ever happened to that style of music.
Most definitely. The Three Tenors in Dodger Stadium was the largest, most publicly viewed concert in the world, and it was also the largest attendance ever drawn for a concert.
Yeah, they certainly did a lot to bring that music into the mainstream, and maybe as much as anyone has done until you are doing right now. Because I imagine with this concert series, you're bringing in a lot of people that don't often go to see a show like this. They won't maybe have never been to a symphony before.
Yeah, and honestly, that's really what I've been trying to do this whole time. Is, you know, we have orchestras in this world that they're literally dying. You know, like the audience is it's a lot of salt and peppers. It's people that are, you know, literally dying. And what this concert does is it brings young blood back into these concert halls. You know, it brings a new crowd and a new audience to replace these literally dying audiences. And I'm very proud of that. You know, I mean, we're bringing in new blood, like I said, and symphonies who book the show through my agent. They're ecstatic because they're not only are they bringing in a younger audience, but they're also bringing in repeat customers. And a lot of these younger audiences, it's their first concert, let alone a symphony concert.
So are the audiences all over the place demographically?
Yeah, totally. They're all over the place. I can't really pinpoint the audience. I mean, granted, we have the majority of people who come to this concert are diehard Zelda fans. But, we also have older parents that are coming that are just kind of curious about, what is this thing Zelda, and so they decide to bring their kids because it's something that is pop culture, right? And then, of course, we have this older crowd or this older populace of people that they like the idea of going to the concert hall and they want to try to check out something new and support the local orchestra. And boy, are they surprised at how, what a wonderful presentation this is. And so you have that, and then of course you just have music aficionados who are just happy. They go out and they see everything. So we have I've been blessed to see generations of people come out with their families. From grandparents to parents to children. And it's a whole education process. The kids are educating the parents are educating the grandparents, and the grandparents are educating everybody on the format. And because one thing that's unique about my shows is I stayed very true to the orchestral format. So we have a 66-piece orchestra. We have a 24-voice choir, sometimes larger on the choir. Usually it's 24, but we do offer 32. And then, of course, we have a very talented conductor in Emer Noon. And so we have almost 100 people on stage. And, we don't use any playback at all. It's all live. And then, it's a pretty interesting dynamic when you see all this. You have all these people from all walks of life converging on this concert hall, and it's just a pleasure to watch. A lot of times when I go to the show, I'm more interested in people watching, just because it's a trip,
Are there people in costume?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I bet this is the only symphony in the world where people dress up as elves and monsters to come see the symphony.
Yeah, it's Halloween every day at a Zelda concert.
That's fun. That's cool that you're, bringing this somewhat traditional and classic thing and bringing these new elements into it that have never been done before.
Yeah, one of the staples of my productions is I always highlight the musicians. So between the FMVs of the games and the gameplay footage, we'll always kind of highlight some of the musicians on the big screen. So we'll do close-ups of the harpist, or we'll do close-up of the pianist, or we'll do a close-up of the violinist, or the flutist. We really try to give them, try to bring the audience onto the stage really, and try to let them see, what is so beautiful about these fingers working, and what really elicits that sound from these instruments.
The people that aren't necessarily familiar with The Legend of Zelda and are just music fans, what do they come away from the show thinking? Have you ever heard of anyone who got into Zelda because of your shows?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've had that. Look, I have the most talented staff of people working on this show that I've ever had the pleasure of assembling. And they're all young. I have Chad Sider, borderline genius. He's my music director, and he's done all the arrangements, working with Koji Kondo of Nintendo. And the music is appreciated not just from Zelda fans. It's also appreciated from people who actually they know music. They know how difficult it is, and this music's not easy to perform either. From a musical standpoint, it's difficult music.
This is music from all Zelda games, or all eras of Zelda games anyway?
Yeah, exactly. From beginning to end. Or, everything but the Skyward Sword, which is the latest game. But for 2013, we're going to add that.
Is there a difference in the Zelda music? I'm just talking about the music itself here, technically. The music that was composed for an 8-bit Nintendo, where it kind of came out in beeps and boops, versus the music that was composed certainly by Skyward Sword and Wind Waker. Those games probably have something, I don't remember off the top of my head, they have close to orchestral soundtracks already.
Yeah, they do, but it's all electronic. It's all MIDI. It's all sample libraries, with the exception of some live recording. it's for the most part with the Zelda franchise, it's always been MIDI samples.
So the music from the early 8-bit games all the way through the modern games, it's all compatible with each other, even though it was, coming out of completely different hardware.
Yeah, it's all compatible because what we do is we take the music and we're taking these original themes and tunes and we're making them into full-blown orchestrations. So we're essentially what we're doing is we're mimicking the sound and providing context to it and adding structure to it.
You mentioned the visuals. Are you just playing an Ocarina of Time speedrun and displaying that to the entire theater as the show goes on?
No, man. We've created. We're all storytellers. I mean, all of my staff is backgrounds in film, and I used to be a producer of commercials and what have you. So, I mean, we all know storyline and timelines, and we work on this show. It's more or less the way that we've treated this concert is it's what I've always wanted to do with all my productions. And so what we have is we have a click track. So all the musicians are playing on a click track, and everything's on a track. So the video is all synced with the music at all times. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's a metronome to sync everyone up.
So it's not just one game. It's scenes from all the games basically, and it's more or less a story. It's like a retelling of the story of The Legend of Zelda through the visuals and the music. So the soundtrack is more or less an accompaniment to the visuals.
What, in your mind, is the story of The Legend of Zelda? Because it's not exactly, Metal Gear 2, which is a direct sequel to the events of Metal Gear 1. The timeline of Zelda is something that people have debated a lot for years, so how do you interpret the story of the whole series?
Well, that's really up to the experts. I have experts on my staff that really deal with that. But we've just tried to reinterpret kind of what we think is the order of the story of A Legend of Zelda. You know what I mean? So we've taken it through Hyrule. We've taken it through, the various levels of Zelda, and we put it more or less on a timeline that we see as being kind of the retelling, if you will.
I want to hear more about these experts. What exactly are they experts in?
They're experts. They're experts at Zelda. I mean, they live and breathe the stuff. I mean, they could sit here and talk for days about Zelda. They could pick apart every single element of Zelda as if they're writing the Hyrule Historia book. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much about The Legend of Zelda that a guy like me who's got a lot of other entrepreneurial efforts and things like that, it's kind of difficult for me to just go in too deep. I mean, I have experience with Zelda, but these people are pretty much like anything Zelda they know.
What are some details that these guys have added to the show?
Yeah, I mean, just little things like, for instance, we have a Wind Waker. We had a custom Wind Waker baton created for our conductor to conduct with. We have some of our encores, or like you wouldn't know, the music unless you were a diehard Zelda fan, and that really just came from listening to fans and what they wanted. So we've created special arrangements for that, So, we've really tried to tailor. I mean, this show is for the fans by the fans, really. It's just a very tailored program that you would have to, like. I can't give it away, the encores, but you would know when you come to this show, you leave knowing that, this is an authentic Zelda experience.
I love that there's spoilers that you can't give away in the set list. That's really fun.
Well, yeah, because it's, I'm sure if you go on the blogs and you check the online stuff, I mean, you'll find it, but
it's a spoiler. You won't enjoy the show as much because you'll know the surprises that are coming.
Yeah, exactly. And it's coming from me, so, and I don't pump any BS, so it's gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is. Like you're gonna get it.
Do the musicians playing the music, were they familiar with the game?
Some are, and that's the beauty of it. Whenever you have a genre that's been around, a franchise that's been around for 25 years, you get musicians that actually grown up with this franchise. So that's kind of cool.
Were there any that got into it, now that they're playing the music all the time?
Yeah, it's in some so much so that they even when I've had guests at the show like Koji Kondo, or they're like, "Can I meet him?" I'm like, "No, dude, you can't meet him." So it's like, because that's like he's like their their god, you know?
Of course. Who is this Koji Kondo?
Koji Kondo, he's the creator of the music of Legend of Zelda.
Has he done all the games?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, video game music is, I'm really into video games. I've read a lot about video games, but the music is, I don't know all the composers. It's just not something I know as much. This guy's done all the music for every Legend of Zelda game so far.
Yeah, I mean, he's the music director at Nintendo, so he's pretty much in charge of anything that is released from Nintendo.
I think the Super Mario Brothers theme song, not to you know, change topics completely, but that Mario Brothers theme song, I think might be like the most popular song of the 20th century on a worldwide level. Perpetually one of the top selling ringtones. Their music they put out there is just incredible and iconic.
No, it is, and you know, I've had the pleasure of having Koji Kondo perform at my other show, Play. That exact ringtone that you hear, you know, so it's really an honor. I mean, and we performed that along with Metroid and Zelda at my other concert, the Play a Video Game Symphony. So you have to check that one out too.
That sounds good too. What are some other songs you mentioned before that you play in there?
Anything. I have everything. I have a catalog of over 75 arrangements that we perform as part of Play. So anything from Shadow of the Colossus to Street Fighter, to Sonic the Hedgehog, World of Warcraft, all the Elder Scrolls games from Skyrim to Oblivion to Morrowind, Guild Wars 1 and 2. You know, you name it, I got it. We have everything as part of that.
Do you have any dream games, any dream arrangements that you want to work into the show, but you haven't been able to yet for one reason or another?
Yeah, I do have a couple. Mega Man is one of them.
Oh, the Mega Man music's so good.
I haven't been successful in getting the rights to perform the arrangement that I have, because it's really a game that relies heavily on the visuals. Just because a lot of people who, even though they're hardcore gamers, probably wouldn't recognize it. I also have some really cool stuff, like I have Castlevania arrangements that are really cool that I perform as part of Play. You know, Gauntlet's one that I like to do. I have a lot, you know, I mean, there's so many.
Do you ever listen to video game soundtracks? I mean, like 8-bit Nintendo video game soundtracks just for fun, like on your iPod?
You know, I'm a geek, but I'm not, I don't have that much time.
You don't have, you don't have to. I was just wondering. I'm just trying to test the depths here.
Yeah, no, it's all good. You know, I'm more or less at this point in my life. I do it for work, you know. So, for research purposes, I will do that kind of stuff. But more or less, I'm not really I'm not that, you know.
But you do have to stay up on, you know, like Elder Scrolls is a series that really only in the past year I think has reached the level of these other franchises like Halo and Zelda. So I imagine you do have to stay up on what's going on and what the newest stuff is.
Always. You know, I was just in Chicago and I had, you know, we had a post-show wrap up with the composer of Mass Effect. You know, so I'm definitely out there trying to, you know, get new music as part of Play and continue to stay up to speed with what's going on in the video game world. It's part of what I have to do as a video game, you know, music producer.
Is that your main focus right now, being a video game music producer?
You know, right now it is. You know, I just sold another business of mine, so I've been really just focusing on this Zelda project because for me, it's so successful that I just think that it needs all my attention, and Nintendo's very deserving of it. You know, they've been a huge supporter of my show and my work, so I really need to give them my all, you know, and a lot of people want to get on this train, you know, I'm booking this show, so, you know, I got a lot of shows booked, so I got a lot of work to do.
To bring it back to Zelda for a moment, do you have an ocarina in the symphony? Because Zelda has a lot of music in the games. There's the flute, or is it an ocarina in Link to the Past that, like, teleports them out of place, and of course, the Ocarina in Ocarina of Time, you're, like, playing notes on a sheet of music when you play that, and obviously it's not, you know, you're not really playing the notes, but the Link himself, oh my god, I almost called Link Zelda, you know, he's kind of a musician.
I got an ocarina in my house, but you know, we don't have an ocarina. We do have an arrangement that we are going to include that has ocarina, but you know, I don't know if you're familiar, but I just produced an event in New York in September at the Nintendo World Store. And as part of that event, we had a seven-piece ensemble that performed original arrangements from The Legend of Zelda. But we also did what was really cool is I had David Ramos from San Antonio, who's an ocarina expert, do an ocarina demonstration for everyone, and it was really cool. And So if you ever get a chance, if you're interested, really, I would go to this website. It's called Songbird, and they actually sell beautifully done ocarinas, and they also have like a little tutorial on it, so you can learn how to play, the ocarina, and it's all about Zelda. So it's really cool. So I highly recommend that.
Before you mentioned, it seemed like a big moment when you had played at E3 and Miyamoto was there. What was the feedback from him?
Wow. What can I say? Miyamoto is not your ordinary. He's not your ordinary president of a company. He's a very gracious and humble person, and he's been nothing. I mean, I'm very lucky. He's written me a personal letter thanking me for my efforts with Play, and The Legend of Zelda. He's a huge supporter. I've had the fortunate pleasure of hanging out with him in Tokyo and in LA and all those guys for that matter. Koji Kondo, Aonuma-san, who's the producer of the game. What can I say? They're very hands-on though. They definitely have a lot of input on the show, so it's a very authentic show.
Well, I think maybe what happened, I'm just guessing there, I have no idea, is I think ever since that Super Mario Brothers movie came out, Nintendo's been real hands-on about what is done with their incredibly beloved and wonderful characters, and I think since then they've been a little more careful, and I think it's paid off. And that's I think why I was so excited to see the sign for the Zelda show, because Nintendo has established their brand such that it's gonna be good. It seems unlikely there's a bad Zelda show being put on just because Nintendo's so controlling of it.
That's awesome that you say that and you recognize that, because that's my job as a producer is to make it look as first party as possible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I want it to be as, like, I hate to say it again, but it's the most authentic concert there is out there devoted to a particular franchise, and that's exactly how I've done it.
What do you have to do to be as Nintendo as possible when you're producing something?
You work with what they give you. You work with the assets. You work with the people who are actually working in Redmond, Washington, and Kyoto, Japan. You do everything by the guidelines, and you work very closely with the original creators of the game. That's the only way you can do it.
What insight have they offered into producing the show?
Well, I have a really good relationship with the people in Redmond. They've supplied me with all the assets, really, and Koji Kondo, oversees, a lot of the arrangements that we've done, and he gives us his feedback, and we make the changes if necessary. Everything is through a very stringent and strict approval process. So, and we appreciate that, because that's how you do it.
When I think of the Zelda audio landscape, the music's a part of it, but also the sound effects are a big part of it too. Like that little jingle it plays when you find a secret is one. It's so satisfying. They reused it for they've used it for every Zelda game. It's just one of the most satisfying things you can do in video games is find a secret in Zelda and get that little do 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 do. I hope I did it right. Do you guys incorporate the sound effects from the game into the show too?
We don't really have that. We don't really have that. We don't have that sound effect, no.
Maybe if I did it again. Do 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 do.
It was funny you say that, because we did that at the press conference. But that was just a one-time thing.
I got to get in touch with these Zelda experts. I got some notes for them.
Yeah, cool.
It seems like you've created this new genre of live show, and it's so obvious now that it's here. But what do you think the future of video game concerts is?
It's just going to continue to go as much as we can take it. It's just going to continue to run until Nintendo doesn't want to do it anymore. Really, that's my opinion of it. I think it's just going to continue to go. It's the fans want to keep seeing it. I'm going to continue to do it.
But it seems like Nintendo's never gonna, the fans are always gonna be interested in video game music. I think now that you're onto this, surely there's an audience for this, even if it's not Zelda, for Final Fantasy and for all these other games too.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna continue to go. It's gonna continue to be performed. Look, I mean, games are gonna continue to come out, and it's just gonna. I don't see any end to it, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't either. It's exciting because it's another part of. And this has been discussed a lot, but just nerd culture becoming mainstream. And I think the idea that, like, you can go, it's just it's another avenue. And I think video games are sometimes associated with low culture, but here you've combined probably the most high culture thing you can, symphonies and orchestras, with video games.
Look, I mean, it's a phenomenal show. And like I said, I've never been on a project where I've had such a positive response. I've never had a negative response from the show, so it's a very good thing.
You guys are touring all through the fall, all through the winter. How can people find out where the show is going?
Well, they could find out about it. Our website it's pretty comprehensive in terms of dates listed and what have you.
And that website is?
www.zelda-symphony.com.
Is there something people can do if their city is somehow not getting a Zelda concert? Is there a way they can request one or let you know that there's a community that wants to see this?
Yeah, of course. You can always, if you go to that website, it'll take you to the company website, and you can always email me, or you can always email your local orchestra. That's always a good place to encourage them to want to present such a show. You can definitely do that. Those are the things I would suggest.
I'm really excited to go see it when it comes to New York. And it sounds like a really just unique thing. And I just love seeing video games brought into new worlds. And thanks for doing that.
I appreciate that. It means a lot to have people interested in what it is that we're doing. And, really it's for me, it's a dream come true. And most importantly, though, it's nice to see people like yourself really appreciating what we're doing. And it gives us all the steam that we need to keep it going.
It will definitely be the first symphony I've ever attended.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so maybe I'll like it. I've always wondered how adults like symphonies when that happens. So maybe this is the turning point for me.
I hope so. I think it will be. It's just imagine everything that you imagine the game, The Legend of Zelda, sounding like if it was done with like a movie soundtrack. That's what you're gonna get.
That's fun. I may bring my DS. I may just bring my DS.
That's cool. You'll get a lot of people there with their DSs as well, so you can see everyone there. You can get some
Street Pass.
An
active Street Pass center is the Zelda concert, I bet. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thanks for talking, Jason. This is great.
No worries. Thank you very much.
And thus we conclude another episode of the Jeff Rubin Show. Got another great episode lined up for you next week. We're going to be talking to Matt Graham, who has been a nationally ranked Scrabble player for many years. He placed second in the Scrabble World Championships. He was featured in the documentary Word Wars, in the book Word Freak. He's also a comedian. He's written for Conan. He's appeared on Conan. He's written for Saturday Night Live. And we're going to be talking about Scrabble. Here is what that will sound like. I'm surprised Scrabble is such an international community because it seems very heavily dependent on the English language that we all know in America.
Right, but what that's what I was trying to explain to you a bit ago, is that the game's really about math. So you had Thai players that were great, and they couldn't speak a word of English, hardly. To them,
that doesn't make any sense to me. And this is in the documentary, too, so I believe you. I'm not challenging you on this because I'd lose my turn, but how does someone who doesn't know English become good at Scrabble, where every play is an English word?
Well, I compared it, and I think this is an unfair comparison because it's easier than this, but let's say the game was done with numbers that had up, and you drew random numbers, and only certain numbers were allowed, and they were in the phone book that you had to use as a word source.
That sounds like the least fun game. Like, why would you even start playing that game?
Well, the game, the allure, I like the language. I collect books on words, but the game itself, it's not really a verbal endeavor, and I can't describe. There's great beauty, and it's nice that it mixes with language. Believe me, the Thais learn basic English sounds so that they can try and pronounce these things and make them more accessible to their brain. They're just not very fluent conversationally. So, they're as likely to challenge the word, baseball as they are to play the word viburnum.
Gonna be a good one. If you need your Jeff Rubin fix in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter, where I am at Jeff Rubin Show, on Tumblr at jeffrubin.com, on my Facebook fan page, or at youtube.com/JeffRubin. You can email me any feedback, anything you want to send me. JeffRubin at Jeff Rubin Show. Wait, no, that's it. JeffRubin at JeffRubinShow.com. If I'm having trouble with it, maybe that's a sign I should simplify, because I don't know how I expect you guys to get it. But you can email me. I'll email you back. You can tweet at me, again, at Jeff Rubin Show. I'll tweet you back. Leave a review on iTunes. That'd be terrific. All the usual stuff. And of course, above all, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Next week, Matt Graham on Tuesday. See you there. Bye.